Hey guys, it's Melissa here for melissaoatman.com. Welcome to another episode of Awaken Your Inner Awesomeness, the weekly podcast devoted to all things spirituality and self-improvement. I am so delighted you're here with us today because we have a very special guest. Today we have with us Reverend Lynn LaBorde, and she is a medium, the CEO of the Soma Life Sanctuary. She's a Reiki master, a hypnotherapist, and she's also the author of a book, Channeling Magdalene, A Year of Love. And she's here today to talk to us about how trauma and energy work go hand in hand, and how sometimes if we don't do the energy work, it can elude us from the abundance that we so richly deserve in life. And I know that so many of you out there are probably struggling with this. And so I'm so excited about this topic, and I'm so excited to have you with us today, Lynn. Thank you so much for being here.
Melissa, thank you for the invitation. It's my honor, truly.
I'm so excited to hear more about this topic and about, how you've channeled Magdalene and that whole journey. So before we get started, though, I'd love to learn a little bit more about you. How did you start doing this work?
When I was 11 years old, my mom had a friend named Kathleen, and Kathleen was kind of like someone on the fringe. And she gave my mom a copy of a book that was called The Sleeping Prophet that was about Edgar Cayce. And Edgar Cayce is by far the most famous medium that's ever been. Bigger even than Teresa Caputo. And I'm on Long Island, so I'm a huge fan of Teresa's, but Edgar did and recorded over 14,000 mediumship readings. And he would go deeply into a trance, so he's a fully unconscious oracle. And a voice would come through, and it would bring forth information from the Akashic records. So what I do in my body of work is I'm a psychic, a medium, a full body trance channel, an oracle, but I'm also a teacher, a healer, and a mentor. And what I teach people is how to read the Akashic records. But to get there, and there's a beautiful book by a woman named Linda Howe, and it's called How to Read the Akashic Records, but I prepare people. So I teach them tools and techniques to remove trauma from their body and to remove trapped energy. So when I read this book at 11 years old, I was fascinated, and that was 1971, so there wasn't a lot that was around. There was Chariots of the Gods by Eric von Dayken. There was some books that Shirley MacLaine was coming out with, and there were the Seth Speak materials by Jane Roberts. But what it started me on was this quest to reconnect with what were the Akashic records, because they felt like home to me. So my whole life has kind of been oriented to that. And then in 2017, one of my girlfriends shows up on Facebook and she said, "Hey, I just got trained to read the Akashic records. Does anyone want a free reading?" And I called her on the phone. I'm like, "Tiffany, coming over right now. I need you to read my records. Oh my God." And I said, "How did you learn this?" And she said, "From Linda Howe." So I started following Linda. And then in early 2017, I got trained to read the records, and it changed everything. It was a game changer for my entire life. It was literally like walking into the portal of creation, because the Akashic records are God's consciousness. And the first time I went in, these beings started screaming and jumping up and down, going, "Halls of Amenti, halls of Amenti, halls of Amenti." And I was terrified. I closed the records and I was like, "Oh my God, what just happened?" So I reached out to my teacher, Linda Howe, and I said, "What was that?" And she said, "Well, they're obviously very excited to see you. Do you know what the halls of Amenti are?" And I said, "No." So I went to the Google and I looked it up. And the halls of Amenti, that's literally what it said. Can't make this up. The halls of Amenti is where the Akashic records were kept in Atlantis. And before the destruction of Atlantis, Thoth the Atlantean put them in his spaceship, flew to the land that is now known as Egypt. And I was like, "Oh my God, that's crazy." So in 2023, actually in 2020, Jesus and Mary Magdalene, who I've been channeling, came to me and they said, "We want you to take a journey of channeling Mary Magdalene every single year. Every single day for 1 year in 2021. And we want you to go through the 365 lessons of A Course in Miracles, which is a beautiful, beautiful, incredible healing adventure." There are 3 books to it: the text, the lessons, and then the manual for teacher. So Magdalene and I started this journey. Here's the book. And every single day, it's 744 pages. We literally went through, we would read the Course in Miracles lesson of the day, and then I would let her channel through me her wisdom. Now, I had a little bit of imposter syndrome, and I thought, there's no way. I just faked that whole thing. Like, I hope nobody ever finds out. But in 2023, I went to Egypt. I took a group of people to Egypt. And when we came back, Yeshua and Magdalene came to me and they said, it's time to print the book. And I was like, no, no, no. But a friend of mine had very lovingly transcribed every single word that I did on the videos and basically created the book for me. So 3 friends stepped up, and it turned out, like, this is wild. It turned out that they were the 3 aspects of the 3 wise men. So one represented gold, one represented myrrh, one represented frankincense. And the woman who represented gold, her name is Lynn, spelled exactly as mine is, which is Lynn. And I had made in the early 90s a golden cartouche with my name in Egyptian hieroglyphics. So I gave that to her as my gift of saying thank you for this journey with me. So that book is available on Amazon. It's such a gorgeous journey. When the 3 of them started editing it, it was Raymond, Lynn, and my friend Nina. And they said, "Oh my God, her words are so pure." And I was like, "Wait, what?" They were like, "Lynn, that's not you. You don't talk like that. You don't act like that. Like, this is pure Magdalene's energy." And what Yeshua has said about her. I'm writing my 2nd book, which is all about her life and her journey with him and their relationship and their marriage and their children. What Yeshua says about her is she went from being my greatest student to becoming a great teacher and becoming my teacher. And she had the capacity to embody through her heart everything that he taught. And she's just, to me, the most tender and loving being that I've ever channeled. And I channel about 20 of them, ascended masters. So that began my journey with the Akashic Records. I had received training in 1989 for 4 years, working with trauma, teaching people how to open up their psychic gifts and abilities, and therefore preparing them for this journey of the Akashic Records. So, Melissa, I swear to God, as I look at my life, like everything led me to the next thing that happens, you know? Just been really astounding.
That's really interesting too, because you talk about trauma. Do you believe that trauma is one of the biggest things that leads people to perhaps trying to find their spiritual gifts or opening up to the spiritual gifts that they have?
Yes. So Einstein is probably one of my favorite beings that ever existed in this incarnation. And all he said that he wanted to study was light. So when the theory of relativity came to him in a dream, E equals mc squared, energy is, it's a big E, is equal to mass times the constant, which is the speed of light squared. So when you can take any matter in the universe and have it travel at the speed of light and duplicate it squared, it instantly converts back to pure white light energy. So what happens with trauma is emotion is meant to go through us, right? Emotion, energy and motion. But we get scared. We get paralyzed. We get immobilized when it comes at us too quickly, like a shock, like an accident, abuse that happens. And instead of the energy being able to move through it, it gets stuck in any one of the bodies: physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, etheric bodies. And it causes trauma because it's like water's trying to flow, energy's trying to flow through us, and there's this huge boulder in the middle that begins to impede us and it backs up. And there's a young woman, she was just diagnosed with cancer because there was a place where she had trauma in her childhood and it just never got resolved. So she's in the process of resolving that right now. So trauma is indeed what stops us. It stops the flows of abundance. Our divine birthright is to receive everything that the Creator has for us. And we are the ones who stop ourselves. We weren't trained with the tools. And I remember in 1989, when I first did this, I came out of the classroom saying, I want to open up Maria Montessori type schools to start to teach people, to start to teach children how to negotiate the energy that gets trapped and blocked just through, childhood. It's like a teacher saying something about you. Oh, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And you label yourself as stupid. And then you spend your life trying to prove how intelligent you are. But fundamentally, you feel, stupid. Things like that. So it's trauma that comes in actions. It's trauma that comes in words, in emotions. A father and a son have a fight, and the father says to the son, you know, you're incapable of doing anything. And then the son starts to tell himself that. We take on these precepts and these beliefs, and it acts like trauma in our lives. And that's exactly the body of work. What I do with my body of work is I teach people how to do something called the clean slate, where you go in and you take the phrases that live in the subconscious and even in the unconscious that are directing our life. We're all self-fulfilling prophecies. And We have in our lives what we feel that we are worthy of. If there's scarcity, it's a belief that somewhere we don't deserve the abundance. So we actually go into people's psyches, we go into the Akashic records, and we kind of go like spelunking into the dark caverns of the mind to find what are the defeating beliefs that you have about yourself and about life. And we find people with, I'm not worthy, I don't deserve, I'm not worthy of love, I'm not worthy of wealth, I'm not worthy of anything. So whatever situations they have in their life, Jesus said this thing. He said, I and I alone have done this to myself. So when people can take that sense of radical self-responsibility and come to truly understand and know that they have done this to themselves, from that point, stop blaming everybody else, stop feeling like a victim to anything, and get to the point where it's like most people drive with their hands on the rearview mirror, wondering why they keep having accidents. But when you can shift and take your hands off the rearview mirror, stop looking at their past, put your hands on the steering wheel and see what's happening in front of you, you can direct the course of your life. You can see where you've parked the car and stalled in life and wonder why you're not getting where it is you want to be. So that's the body of work that I do with people. And when you can go and look your trauma in the face and you can say, Creator, why did I bring this to myself? What am I here to learn from this? Rather than feeling victimized by it, know that there are incredible lessons. And most of them, 90 something percent of them, come from previous incarnations. So when you're in the Akashic Records, I teach people how to do past life healing work, which is really, really powerful. And there's also past lives, future lives, simultaneous. They're all happening, existing at the same time. Sorry, you're having a contact lens moment.
So would you say then that one of the reasons maybe that people have such a problem with healing the trauma is that they aren't really remembering it, that it lies in the subconscious because, as you said, it came from past incarnations as well as this one?
It's the subconscious, it's the unconscious, and if you want to access those, one of the things you have to do is be able to go into stillness and solitude. And that's very difficult for us where we were raised. So there's different frequencies, right? There's theta, there's beta, alpha, and delta. And what happens is the conscious waking state is beta. And our minds were trained to be in beta by memorizing arithmetic, reading, writing, and arithmetic. All the things that were put into the mind, and it clouded and cluttered the mind. So the mind has this very narrow bandwidth where the energy moves quickly that is called beta. When we can begin to meditate and we can move into alpha, we start to move into a lower, like the wave slows down. We start to calm down. It happens when we're watching television. It happens when we're in the phone. It happens when we're on the Zoom call. And then if you can go from there into theta, theta is an even slower frequency. And theta is where you contact your higher self. Theta is where you contact spirit guides. Theta is where you contact the quantum realm. And everything that you've ever desired, God plants these seeds in us for us to experience certain things in each lifetime. And anything that we've ever wanted or desired is literally waiting for us. It's like, here's everything in theta and it's waiting for us, but we're down here going, I'm not worthy. I don't deserve that. My life sucks. Men are this way, women are that way, parents are this way, kids are that way. And we literally push it away when all the Creator wants to do is to give us everything that we've desired. The Creator's infinite abundance. But if we can access the theta realm, which can be done through stillness and solitude, we can go in and we can say, show me what it is that I have been afraid to deal with, to accept, to experience. And many times what you find with people is that the patterns repeat. And it's because the universe keeps giving it back to us and going, look, you didn't do it last time. How about this time? And people are like, no, 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 push it away, push it away. Let me focus on the past. Let me drive with my rearview mirror, wondering why they keep having accidents. So if you can bring yourself to a place of stillness and say, all right, I'm willing to deal with whatever it is that the universe has to show me so that I can move and I can be of service to the light, of service to humanity, and of service to God by letting go of all the noise and the nonsense that has stopped me from having everything that I want and desire, which is a desire that came from God. God literally planted the seeds. He goes, okay, who wants to go to earth and experience what it is to be a millionaire? Bunch of hands go up in the air. And he goes, okay, here are the challenges that you're going to have to face before you can get there. And you're going to have this trauma and you're going to have that trauma. And you're going to find a point where you say, I'm willing to face my fears. I'm willing to look at my darkness. I'm willing to own my shadow. And as soon as you do that, the light comes in, the frequency raises. One of the greatest ways to raise our frequency, people don't know this, is through prayer. And not just like our Father who art in heaven or, saying it in Aramaic, but where you're actually talking to God. And you go, you know what, God? I have this Kabbalah teacher. He's amazing. He'd been teaching Kabbalah for many, many years. And he goes, God, here's the deal. I'm 6 months behind in rent. My wife and I, are expecting babies. And I got to tell you, I'm teaching everyone your laws of abundance, but it looks really bad on you that I'm broke. So suddenly his wife comes up with this idea for a liquid vitamin. And his wife is Mary Ruth, and they own Mary Ruth Organics. And it's now $1 billion company. And David tells these stories. I've known David since 17 years, 20, 27, 18 years. 2007, I started studying with him. And we did a trip to Egypt. And it's funny because he and another teacher and another girlfriend, the four of us were just in Egypt a couple weeks ago. We were told to get out just before the war broke out. 2 of us made it out, but the other 2 got caught. And it's just crazy. People make these choices. Like the 2 that were left behind were there because they had the souls that were strong enough to be able to pray, and to be able, David and I both got out. He went home to Los Angeles. I came home to New York because we had things that we had to take care of here. But the people that got left behind, here's what I noticed about them. They went through a lot of PTSD, but they had the strength and the stamina. My girlfriend Ingrid literally had to walk over the border. I'm watching her live and, in the taxi that she's in, and they're taking her down the Sinai Peninsula. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? And then they cut across and they went to the Suez. And she said, we literally had to walk across a border to get into Cairo. And then from Cairo, she was able to fly home. But everything happens for a reason. Like we are where we are. And she went through everything that she went through, including having her camera confiscated and all that madness, because she had to learn to have certainty and love and appreciation for everything that she had brought to herself. And that's what it is to deal with trauma. If you can walk in and you can say, I am grateful for this experience because it is here to teach me something. And in that teaching to me, it is now something that I'm going to be able to bring to and serve another. Like that's the whole purpose of life. And that's why I teach what I do and I help people the way that I do, because I've journeyed through to, hell and back again in my own life. And I'm here to say that it all works out in the end. It really does work.
I love that you mentioned being grateful for the lesson and what it brings you through. Because I think that's so important. And for a lot of people, it's hard to see that. Of course, it's hard to see it when you're in it,
Sure.
you just want to be out of it.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a lot of people, and myself included sometimes, where fear keeps us from wanting to really look at the trauma.
Yeah.
Or we get so also, I think, exhausted and tired of just constantly doing the healing work. And so I know there's people who get fatigued
Sure.
from, oh, this again, or I have to keep working on this. I have to keep doing this. What would you say to people who may be feeling like that?
That they're not going deeply enough. That when you go in and you really let yourself feel the full pain, because what happens is if there's 7 feet of pain, we let ourselves go down to 6 and then we're like, I'm done. I can't do anymore. But there's still that other foot of pain that we must go in and feel. I recently had another mentor of mine. Her name is Melanie Ann Lair, and she's doing this thing called the experiment. And in the experiment, a bunch of us were brought to our knees to feel the depths of shame. And I was like, oh, I don't feel shame about anything. And when I let myself, go in and go, okay, show me the shame. I literally had one day where I had to take 6 naps because all I did was cry. And I made a list of I was like, here's 8 things I feel shamed about. Oh, wait, here's 22. Here's 37 things I feel shame about. And just letting myself feel what it felt like to feel that shame that was projected onto me. And I wore it like a cloak. I took it on as my own. And Melissa, I swear to you, as soon as I just let myself, I said, all right, God, I'm willing to experience all this. It took me about 3 days. And I came out the other side of it and I was like, wow. It was literally like I took it off and I laid it down and I said, okay, I'm done with that. Now, that's not to say that there won't be more, but for that passage, I was willing to get still, to not deflect, to not disassociate, but to sit there and say, show me the pain of what it is that I haven't been willing to feel with my own shame. And it was cathartic beyond imagination. The reason why it comes up again, if it does, is because we haven't gone to the depth of it. So what I say is, you got to go deeper. And all you have to be willing to do is to feel it, because as soon as you feel it, you heal it. It's energy. If we feel the energy moves through us. But if we go, okay, I'm willing to feel most of this, but not all of this, it's stuck with us. So it's just a process. It takes courage, man. It takes huge courage to say, I am willing to feel my pain. Listen, I'm the first one to say, okay, I need some guidance with this one. Yeshua, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, Sophia, Archangel Michael, I need you guys surround me with your golden light and help me to walk through this. It's phenomenal.
Would you recommend, because you talked about feeling shame, but there's so many different emotions that we have.
Sure.
We have anger, resentment, all of those things. So would you recommend picking an emotion to start with, but then working through each different one?
Like, what's the one you don't want to feel the most? For a lot of people, it's fear, but there's that beautiful acronym, false evidence appearing real. And people think that fear, you know what sits on the other side of fear is love. We've said, I cannot experience something. So another a question that I ask clients is, connected to fear, what must not be experienced? And then the thing comes up. I remember when I was doing this training, I said, connected to fear, what must not be experienced? And suddenly there was a tiger in my face. I was being mauled to death in some lifetime. And then you let yourself experience that and you release it and it goes. And then I said, okay, what must not be experienced? And suddenly I was on the Titanic and I was in a lifeboat with my mother and my brother and my sister. And my father was on the ship and I watched the ship break in half and it went down into the water. And that was the year that they found the ship in two pieces. And I was like, wow, like the impact I had on the healing of that trauma for me was the ship got discovered. And there was a book about the Titanic and there was our family. And I drove to Cooperstown, New York and found the house that I lived in. I found my gravesite. I found my gravesite 4 different times. It's crazy. I found it in Egypt, found it here in the town where I live, found it up in Cooperstown. Like, we can go and find ourselves. I found myself in France. We can go in, and when we go in and we make peace with the past, it brings us more present to the future than we've ever been before. So I would say, find one thing that you don't want to feel. I don't want to feel pain. I don't want to feel anger. I don't want to feel fear. And call for assistance, call for spiritual guidance. Creator, I ask you to help walk me through this aspect of my beingness that terrifies me, and the assistance will come. We're never alone. God, if people could see, help people to open up their clairvoyance, their clairsentience, their clairaudience, their claircognizance. And I had this one client one time. She was a phenomenal shaman, but she couldn't see. So we went into a lifetime where she was the medicine woman for an Indian tribe somewhere in Montana, hundreds of years ago. But she had lived so long, it was like 3 generations later, and the head of the tribe now didn't respect her. They were like, "Oh," she said, "We're gonna be attacked. These marauders are coming." They're like, "Oh, old lady, you're crazy." So the day of the attack, she goes and she hides in a cave. When she comes back, the tribe is decimated, and there's this one being who's still alive and is so furious at her. They said, "You did it. You saw this. You made this happen." And they took 2 wooden pieces, 2 wooden embers that were burning hot like charcoal. They put them on her eyes to burn her eyes out and left her to die. And she made the decision at that point, I'm never going to use my gift of vision again. And she closed it down. And after we did that healing, her clairvoyance opened up wide. She had many, many other gifts. It's interesting. It's like when someone can't see, their hearing or their sound or their taste or their smell gets higher, it becomes a heightened sense because you've lost this one. But all of a sudden, that was given back to her. She allowed herself to see, you know? So there's things like that that can be done. It's
That's so
pretty much.
crazy because honestly, I did a past life regression with
Mhm.
a healer one time and had a very similar life as
Yeah,
what you just described. It
yeah,
wasn't exactly the same, but it was very similar. And so it was
yeah.
like, that's interesting that I felt like doing the past life regression was so, for me, informative
Yeah,
because there's
yeah.
so many things going on in the current reality that
Oh,
I
listen,
lived through in a past one that is,
all past lives feed into this lifetime.
yeah,
So every issue that we have has come from some. I call it going back to the first domino. Like imagine each lifetime you have all these dominoes lined up and you're just reliving all the trauma that hasn't yet been resolved. And so when you can go back to that first domino, the whole line falls flat and then it's no longer an issue for you. I used to have a, a crippling fear of spiders. I'm in a large room. There could be a tiny little spider up in the ceiling, and I'm out the door screaming for someone to kill the spider. And when I went in and I found out about that lifetime and where the trauma came from and then subsequent lifetimes, I healed it. And now there could be a spider as big as my hand, and I'd put it under a bowl, slide a piece of paper on it, throw it out in the backyard. I remember I lived in Texas when I was doing training many years ago, and we had these two dogs. And one of the girls in the training goes, "Dogs found a spider." And I'm like, "Found a spider?" It was a tarantula.
oh my
And they
gosh.
put it in a glass jar, and I was like, like petrified, immobilized. I couldn't move. So when you can go back and really own, like I find people's fears fascinating. I always want to go in and go, okay, what are you afraid of? Let's go in and heal it. Because the freedom and the love and the raising of frequency that comes from the healing of that is phenomenal. It's one of my favorite things to do.
I love that. And I
Thank
love
you.
the work that you're doing for people because I think it's so very important.
He- Here's one of my favorite things. I don't just do the work, I actually teach people. I put them through a year-long training program to learn how to use the tools that I do. Because it's not enough. It's like you can give a man a fish or teach a man to fish, and I wanna teach people, and I do. And hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people have gone through this training, and the work that they do in the world is phenomenal. So if anybody wants to learn how to have tools that you can use. In my very first class, it's a 12-week class, I teach 10 psychic healing tools, which culminates in learning how to read the Akashic records and then how to go into the records and do what we call Akashic healing. But, you learn how to release entities, you learn how to release trauma, you learn how to open up your clairs, you learn how to do something called psychic surgery, which is the best tool for releasing trapped energy. You learn how to do clean slate and take the power out of words. If people are reading, you ever have that experience, Melissa, where you're reading, you get to the bottom of the page and you're like, what was I just reading? You're like, you get triggered by a word and it triggers you into a memory and you're no longer present to what it is you're reading. You have to go back to where you last remember being present on the page and look up that word and find out what's the trauma that's associated with that. So those are the things that I do. I love.
So I normally will pull a card for people
Okay.
and we're on the show. So if you are okay with that, I
I
thought
love that idea. It's so funny. I was in another meeting today and someone said, "Can I pull a card for you?" So yeah, I have probably 90 oracle decks myself.
yeah, I love them. Oh my gosh. It's a bad habit. Anyway,
No,
um,
it's a beautiful habit. It's a beautiful, beautiful, empowering habit. I would never, is what Jesus said to me. If you knew the power of the mind, you would never say another negative thing about yourself. So I would never say another pejorative, negative thing about yourself. It's a beautiful habit to have.
well, I pulled the card. I think it's always interesting because this goes right along with what we've been talking about the whole time. This is from Angela Rose's deck, and it is Fear is a Liar.
Mhm. It is. It is. Actually, fear is information. Fear is telling you there's a place where you have energy trapped. If you believe the fear, that's where the lie comes in. But if you use the fear as information, you've opened up your own freedom. If people are willing to tell the truth, listen, the highest frequency is not love. Everybody thinks it would be love. Do you know what the highest frequency is? Truth. authenticity. There is no greater wisdom than truth. And when you're willing to tell the truth about something, which means you're willing to look at what it is that fear is trying to teach you, because it's a tool, you've gained access to your own freedom.
I love that. In this, you've already talked about this, but there's an action that goes with this card and it says, name your fears. What are they? Have a releasing ceremony, tear up the page or burn it safely. If you feel afraid, confront your fears. And there's a mantra that goes with this card. It says, today I will confront my fear and stand in my power.
I love that. That was the perfect card for today.
It was. It really was. And that always happens. The universe has just
Yes.
designed everything so amazingly.
Oh, yeah. We think we're in charge of things, but we're not.
Yes.
It's all
realize that.
It's all, divine shenanigans, as I call them.
Yes.
Melissa, thank you so much for this. This has been an absolute delight.
Thank you so much for being here with us. I've absolutely loved hearing your story and sharing your words of wisdom. If there are people listening who would like to work with you or follow you or maybe grab a copy of your book, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can find me on YouTube for Soma Life Sanctuary, SOHMALIFE, Soma Life Sanctuary. There are thousands of videos there of channelings, channeling Yeshua, channeling Magdalene. A friend of mine channels Yeshua, and I put his videos up as well, and about 20 other ascended masters. They can find me on my website, which is Soma Life, SOHMALIFE.com. I'm on TikTok as Revlin LaBorde. I'm on Instagram as Revlin LaBorde. I got about 25,000 people that follow me on social media. Not one of the big shots, but I make an impression.
Hey, bigger than what I have. So
Thank you, my love.
Well, I want to thank you so much. And I'm going to go follow you on YouTube. I can't wait to see some of your channeling. And I encourage you all to do the same. As always, if you like this podcast, please leave a positive review. Please share it with anyone you feel might also benefit from this. I want to thank you so much for being here with us today. This was an amazing conversation. And I feel so much lighter even after having this conversation. I hope that you'll continue to follow both of us and have an amazing week. As always, I'm sending you so much love and light, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.